I'll just make it a bit of full screen if I can. Turn on my camera. Hi there, everyone.
Hello.
I'll start by apologising a little bit. I'm recovering from COVID at the moment, and so my voice tends to go, and I tend to have to start coughing every now and again. But hopefully, it won't be too disturbing for you. I'll try and mute my microphone if I can when I have one of my coughing attacks. And hopefully, it won't last too long.
Get well soon.
Hopefully, yes. Sooner the better. Okay, so this session is on AI in the language classroom and looking at some of the challenges and the opportunities. Just a bit about myself. I'm director of Peachey Publications, the pedagogical director. Just to start my coughing already. I've worked in English language teaching for about 30 years now, and probably most of the last 25 of those have been involved with the use of educational technology in the classroom. And I did a master's in education, which I started about, I think it was 1998 or something like that. And so I was quite an early adopter of educational technology. I've been nominated for British Council Innovations Awards 6 times, and I've won twice. So there's my kind of kudos is that I've won the 2012 Award for Excellence in Course Innovation and the 2016 Innovation for Teachers Resources, which was for a book that I wrote and self-published, which was the first book I wrote and self-published for Peachey Publications. More recently, I've published a book called ChatGPT in the Language Classroom, which goes along with a course. You can take them separately if you want to, or you can have them both if you do the course. And that's what most of the information from this evening comes from, that course. And if you want the presentation and all the links from the presentation that I'm doing this evening, if you wait until the end, I'll share a QR code with you, and you can access the whole of the presentation with all of the various prompts and the interactive buttons. So things like this, these little buttons, hope you can see them enlarging along the bottom there. If you click on these, they'll take you to the things I share on LinkedIn or the things I share on YouTube and things like that. So you can follow to my social media presence or check out the book and the course if you want to. Okay, I'll get started. My earliest interaction with AI within the context of teaching was actually back in, I think it was about 2001, 2002. At the time, I was working as a teacher in Morocco and for the British Council, and I had a group of students who were teenagers, quite young teenagers, maybe only just teenagers, maybe about 12, 13. As teenagers tend to be, they were a bit self-conscious about speaking to each other and communicating with each other in English, because obviously they spoke French and Arabic, and they didn't really see why. Excuse me. So I was looking around for things that I could do with them to get them interacting in English. And one of the first things that I thought of was perhaps I could get them into a chat room where they could sort of type and interact with other people online. And then the more I thought about this, I thought it wasn't such a good idea. I had no idea who these people they'd be chatting to were. And I had no idea what they'd say. And most of the interactions that I'd had in chat rooms anyway, weren't particularly good. They were kind of, hey, what's up? What are you doing? Where are you from? And that was about it. But at the time, there was a film that had just been released called Artificial Intelligence. And it was a very good film produced by Steven Spielberg, but it was based around the Pinocchio story. You know the story of Pinocchio, who's a wooden boy who tells lies and he wants to be a real boy. The film was a modernized version, and in the modern version of the film, the Pinocchio, or the boy, was an android who looked exactly like a real boy, but wasn't a real boy. He was an artificial intelligence robot. but he wanted to be real and he wanted his mother to love him. And it was a very interesting film, but it also had a website that went with it. And on the website, there was a chat bot. And the chat bot was quite simple. It was just a line where you could type in a question and ask the robot questions, and it would answer them in English. So I thought this would be a good thing to do with my students. And I got my students interacting with the chat bot, asking it questions, and they really enjoyed this. Excuse me again. And they really enjoyed this. They used a lot of language. And what I saw was that, they were able to ask almost any question they wanted, and the chatbot would still answer. Unlike sort of going into a chat room with a person, the chatbot had no self-consciousness. It wasn't worried, or it had no ego. It would answer whatever questions they wanted, and it would try to answer them truthfully. And so they had some very good discussions with it. But they also found after a while that it got confused, and they realized that it wasn't a real person answering, because it couldn't follow a longer line of conversation. It was very good at answering a single question and then answering a very difficult question, but a different question. But if they tried to reference back to earlier in the conversation, it had no memory of the earlier conversation. So it was a bit like having a conversation with a goldfish, if you like. They have something like a 2-second memory, or so we're told. And so they couldn't build up a longer, more in-depth conversation on anything. And that's been the case with chatbots for quite a long time, until, November of last year, when OpenAI released ChatGPT. And that was really a quantum leap forward for chatbots, which is what ChatGPT is. And these are some of the really important things that I think it's moved forward with. It can respond to questions in a very spontaneous way. And it isn't limited just to responding. It can sort of dig for more information and ask follow-up questions. So that's very impressive. It can follow conversational threads. You can have a very long conversation where you reference back to something 3 or 4 turns before, and it still understands what you said. So it's very, very like having an interaction with a real person. The other thing it can do is it can instigate response. It can ask you questions, evaluate your answers, and ask follow-up questions based on your answers. So it's able to interact with people on a very complex level. The other interesting thing, and that's the 4th one of my bullet points here, is that it can be programmed. So ChatGPT and chatbots now can be programmed to fulfill a specific task. For example, marking homework and things like that. So I think, these are some quite interesting aspects of ChatGPT that are part of what takes it that much further forward and makes it that much more usable. If you want to dig into the background of artificial intelligence and machine learning, I've added a couple of videos here. You can watch these later once you have the presentation. And what you'll see is a presentation and an avatar who will be talking to you. As you can see, she's moving her head at the moment, but I don't have the sound on. When you listen to her voice as well, because her voice is actually produced by artificial intelligence too. And this video was produced using a very simple piece of software called, I can't remember what it's called now, but there is a link to it here. So if you want to find out more about ChatGPT and more about machine learning, there's one about machine learning too. Listen to her, see what you think of her speaking ability too. How many of you have already used ChatGPT? Can you type in a yes or a no? Or a similar tool? Yeah, a mixture. Most people have. Yeah, lots of people have. How many of you have tried it with your students as well? Say, yes, I have, if you've tried it with your students. I'd like a yes, I have. Yeah. Okay. So trying it with students is a little bit riskier, I'm sure, as well. So this is what the interface looks like, and you'll be able to pick up this presentation later. Please don't annotate on the presentation because everybody will be able to see it, and it will be recorded on the video too. So if you're annotating, I've just seen a little yellow line appearing, so please kind of get rid of it if you can. Okay, this is what ChatGPT looks like. I've put some little numbers over it so you can check out what the different things are later if you want to get a more detailed look at the interface. But the main parts of this part at the bottom, number 9, where you type in your response, and then the response appears above and your prompt appears. So anything that you type into this area labeled number 9 is called a prompt. It prompts a response from the AI. So if you want to check out these things, there are some interesting details in terms of what ChatGPT remembers and what you can go back to. So have a look at it later. So that's what it looks like, but it doesn't have to look like that, and it doesn't have to just be text-based. You can also interact with it using your voice and get it to respond to you using audio. And that you can do that using a number of plugins, but this is one that I particularly like. It's a plugin for Chrome, and it's called Voice Master for ChatGPT. So you can download that and add it to Chrome for free if you want to interact with it by voice, or if you want to get your students to interact with it by voice. As you can see, once you interact with it by voice, you'll see at the bottom, there's a kind of toolbar where the yellow part and the blue part is. So you can select different languages that you interact with it with. It doesn't just have to be English. And you can select the voice, whether it's a female voice or a male voice that you want to interact with and hear. What you see on the screen is actually an example of a task that I tried. And what I did is I plugged the voice app in, and then I read a text to it and asked it to give me feedback on my pronunciation. So here you can see at the top, my prompt is, please give me feedback on my pronunciation. Then ChatGPT replies that it would. And then I read this text here, starting with, please call Stella. I chose this text because it has all of the different sounds of the English language in it. So it was like a good way to see what sounds it could pick up on and what sounds it couldn't. And then at the end of reading my text here, it gives me a list of 5 points in terms of feedback and pronunciation. But I could use any text. It doesn't have to be this text, and I could continue. So that's just one example of the things that we could get our students to do in terms of developing their speaking and pronunciation, so they can speak to it, they can get feedback from it as well. If don't bother about writing down the names of the websites, you'll be able to get all the links when I give you the presentation at the end, okay? Okay, so that's one way. So bear in mind as I go through the rest of the presentation that all of the things we're doing with it could be spoken instead of written. I'll start off with a few things that teachers can do with it. So the first thing, something that takes up a lot of our time is lesson planning. I'd just like you to type in, actually, how long does it take you to plan a lesson if you're starting from scratch? You have no materials, you just know what your class is and you know what the aim is. How long would it take you to prepare a lesson? I'll give you a couple of minutes to type while I have some water. Minimum 30 minutes to 1 hour. Yeah, it's quite a time-consuming task, especially when you first start teaching. I remember, when I first started teaching, I had a course book, but it also still took me a couple of hours to plan a lesson possibly because I wasn't that confident or competent when I started off as well. Okay, so one thing that we can do is that we can get ChatGPT to plan a lesson for us. At least it will give us a starting point for our plan. And I put here under the pop-up, there's a prompt here that you can use if you want it to plan a lesson for you. The first part up the top here, This is kind of a template, and you can edit this template, this prompt template. You can write in the time that you want your lesson to take, whether it's 60 minutes or 90 minutes. You can add the level of your students to it. You can add the aim of your lesson. And you can also add the type of approach you'd like it to be, whether you want it to be transmission teaching, test, teach, test, guided discovery, whichever ones of those you want. And I'll show you how that works. I've got an example one. I've edited it already. I've got a 60-minute lesson, and it's for teachers who are students who are level A2, and it's about narrative tenses, and I want it to use a test, teach, test approach. So I'll copy that. I'll go to ChatGPT, if my browser will let me. Okay, and I'll paste it in here. I'll make this a bit bigger for you so you can see better what I'm posting in. So there's my prompt. Maybe that's a bit too big. And I click enter. And this is how long it takes to write my lesson for me. Okay, I've got the lesson, narrative tenses, 60 minutes. I've got the objectives at the top here already. The materials. It tends to be quite traditional in terms of materials. I've got an introduction. And then I've got the test part of my lesson. Distribute worksheets with sentences, past simple. And, okay, now I've got the teach part here. Okay, going through the tenses, and then test again. And I've got a wrap up and suggestions for homework as well. And that was all done in what, 2 minutes, maybe less than 2 minutes. To plan my lesson. Okay, it might not be the best lesson, and I might be able to do a better one myself, but I don't think I could do it more quickly. The other thing that I can do with it is that, okay, I asked it to be a test, teach, test lesson. I can also ask for a different style of lesson. I could ask for the same lesson, but change to a different methodology. So I'll say, change this to guided discovery. And here it is, it's already produced another lesson using a different approach, but based around the same time, same students, and the same learning, excuse me, the same goals. I mean, this is interesting for a couple of reasons. You know, I think it's great to have that it can apply different methodologies so that we can try teaching the same lesson in different ways. But it's also great if you do teacher training, because you can use these different lesson plans or show these different lesson plans to your trainee teachers, get them to compare them, see what they like, see how the different methodologies work out in reality. So I think that's nice. Okay, you know, as I say, it probably won't be a perfect lesson plan, but it's a good place to start, and it's a good place to start your planning from. You can just take this, you can take the parts that you like, adapt it, change it, and make it more suitable for your students. So I think that's a great way to do it. In terms of, you know, I saw one comment saying it doesn't always work, and that's true, it doesn't. But, you know, whether it works or not is really dependent on the quality of your prompt. You know, if you're giving enough detail about what you want in your prompt here, it will give you much better results. You know, if you're not giving it sufficient detail about who your students are, you know, what levels they are, things like that, what they've already learned, what they still have to learn, you know, then it will give you less good results. So be sure to sort of give it sufficient detail when you prompt it. The next thing we can do as teachers is, it is great to have the lesson plan. And in the lesson plan, it was talking about worksheets, giving a worksheet to your students or giving them a presentation. That's all well and good, but you know, where do those worksheets come from if you don't have a course book? So you can get it to make those worksheets for you, and in a number of different ways. I mean, you could just ask it to produce 20 gap-filled sentences based around narrative tenses, and it would do that. It would be kind of quite a bland approach, I guess. We can try that. If I can get that right. So let's see what it produces if we ask it for this. Hopefully it didn't get too confused by my spelling of narrative tenses, but it knows the concept. So here I've got, so that could be my worksheet. There's my 20 narrative tenses containing gaps. So as you see, it can not only plan our lessons for us, it can actually produce the materials then as well. We'll just have some more time a minute. But it can do them in quite exciting ways. So for example, if we want to use poetry with our students, it can produce poems for our students. So we could have a poem on some topic that we wanted our students to study. It could be a poem about chocolate or social media or anything at all. We could ask it to include within that poem a specific lexical set of words that we want our students to study. So we could get it to add these different words, and we just put the group of words in there and it will produce a poem around them. Something else that's quite nice about it is it will actually produce a poem in the style of a specific poet as well. So we could sort of actually, if we're studying a particular poet in literature, we can actually get a poem produced about in the style of that poet. And I'll demonstrate that quite quickly. New chat. Okay, and I'll edit my prompt. I want a poem about, let's have a poem about social media in the style of, let's say, William Shakespeare. So William Shakespeare would have never known anything about social media because it didn't exist in his time, but we'll see what he has to say about it. Just click, and it's instantly produced a poem in the style of Shakespeare and about social media. Quite a high level one with some difficult vocabulary, but he mentions Instagram, a gallery of our life, Facebook, Snapchat, LinkedIn, TikTok, and then he has a conclusion. In this new world, let's seek to find the balance to share our lives, but not lose our essence. For in the end, 'tis human connections dance that gives our lives their truest recompense. So he's not for it or against it. He sort of likes it, but we have to use it in moderation. So that, that's wonderful, and a wonderful kind of way to sort of introduce a discussion topic or something like that on social media. We could get students to predict what kind of response Shakespeare would have. What would he think about social media? How would he use it? And you could actually lead on from there and ask them to interview William Shakespeare about social media, by asking ChatGPT to act as William Shakespeare, and then it will take on that role. So there are some great ways that's an example of a great way of producing materials. It's great to get our students writing stories as well, but often, our students don't have the imagination to deal with, creating the outline of a story and creating the story. So what we can do is we can ask ChatGPT to produce a story outline that our students can then turn into a story. So there's an easy prompt here: create a plot outline of a story, and you just give it edit this and put in the topic, and ChatGPT will put in the topic. I don't think it's there's a question about plagiarism. I don't think it's plagiarizing William Shakespeare's poems about social media, because I don't think he wrote any. But we'll come back to that issue at the end. But what we're looking at the moment is looking at it in terms of you producing materials for your students rather than them producing. The other thing that's great about it is it can produce plays. It's a great way to get students practicing languages, to give them a play and give them a dramatic script to work on, and that way they get to express themselves in different ways that they wouldn't normally in the classroom. So you can ask it to write a play about any topic. What you will get is probably quite bland, but you can give it more detail. You could write a script based on a scene from a specific book. So, for example, if your students have been studying a book for literature in English, then you can ask it to produce a play based around a chapter from that book. And you can specify the number of characters as well. So, for example, if you wanted your students to work in groups of 5 to practice the play, then it will do that. It will produce a play with only 5 parts. You can actually, again, you can specify the style and the playwright if you want to as well. So we'll give this a chance. Write a script based on a scene. Okay, so I'll start a new conversation, new chat. Put this in, name of the book. I want my students have been studying Narnia, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, I think is the name of the book. And I want it to include 5 characters. I'll put them in groups of 5. And when I click on play, okay. It doesn't want to plagiarize exactly. Okay, so I'm going to edit my prompt. So I've asked it to produce a different version of it. And now I've got my 5. And there's my opening scene, and there's my script. In terms of creativity, I could exercise my creativity and produce this script for my students myself. But, I don't always have the time or the talent to do that. In terms of producing materials for my students, I have the creative ideas, but this takes away some of the sweat of producing those ideas. Okay, so that's my script. And that's something that then I can get my students working on together and practicing. And it's a great way to produce a play. The other thing is that, I can get it to produce any kinds of written communication that I want to use in my classroom. So if I want examples of letters or emails or a chapter of a story or a poem or a blog post that I want my students to analyze, I can produce those as materials for my students. So, for example, I'm going to ask it to write here's a prompt which I can edit. I'll go to ChatGPT, start a new prompt. There's my prompt template. So I'm going to ask it to write an email, and I want it to be for the purpose of to a bank manager. Okay, so I want to ask for a loan to buy a car. Okay. And it's formal, of course, because, that would be the style I'd need. So it produces an excellent example of a formal letter of application to a bank manager to ask for a loan. What I can do is then ask it to change the letter to an informal style. So then I have two examples of the letter that my students can compare, and they can look at what the differences are in terms of formality and informality. Okay, so I've asked it now. And all of a sudden I have this informal letter. Hey, bank manager, hope you're doing well. I'm reaching out to you because I've got some exciting news. So here's the scoop. I had my eye on this awesome car. So, all very informal, but the same kind of structure and relaying the same information. So we can get students then to compare those. And, again, I could have done that myself, but it would have taken hours of my time to produce those two letters. And here they are done within just a few minutes. So that's sort of a huge time saver for us in terms of preparing materials. Okay, so those are a few things that we can do as a teacher. We can get it to plan lessons, and we've got all these different ways that we can use it to produce the materials for our lessons. Now let's have a look at how our students might be able to use it to develop their own English. One of the first things, that everybody told me when I started learning a language is that if you want to learn a language, find a friend who speaks the same language or make friends in that language, and then you can practice it. But we can turn ChatGPT into our student's friend, and especially using those text-to-speech voice plugins that I was showing you earlier, they can then chat with ChatGPT. And it can become their friend. So this is how we would program it to become a friend. So this is a prompt. And in the middle here, you can define the kind of support you want your friend to offer. So, you could get it to be quite a critical friend, or a very supportive friend, or a very empathetic friend. So here's an example. This is a supportive, helpful friend who gives useful words of advice. Now, if I go back to ChatGPT and I put in this prompt like that, click on that, and it says it's ready to become my friend. So now when I talk with it, it will act as my friend, and it will respond and give me supportive advice. And because this little chat is saved in my library here, it's saved in my chat history, I can come back to it anytime and follow up the conversation. So my students, if my students are using this prompt, they can come and chat with it every day. I can have a complaint to it, and it answers me. I'm really sorry to hear that you had a bad day, but I'm glad you're on path to recovery. Take it one step at a time. Remember to prioritize self-care. So I can start chatting with it. And, it doesn't have any feelings or emotions of its own. Okay, so in that way, our students can have regular conversations with someone who talks to them and they talk back. They could decide what kind of friend it would be. They could make it a complaining friend and get it to talk back as well. They can also make it into a teacher. So, for example, if one of your students wants to improve more quickly the others, wants extra work, or if one of them has a weakness in some area of knowledge that they need to improve, you can get it ChatGPT to act as their teacher just by using this prompt, and it will set work for them, and it will mark the work for them so that it doesn't add an extra burden to you. So this is really particularly useful if you want to differentiate learning and you want students doing different kinds of homework that suit them more appropriately. You can tell them what kind of work, what they need to work on, and they can get ChatGPT to work with them. So this is the example prompt. It says, act as my English teacher. I'll tell you what I want to study, and you will create activities to check and develop my knowledge. if you understand, say I'm ready. So ChatGPT says I'm ready, and it will help me. So I want to work on collocation. So, okay. So I've told it I want to work on collocation. That's something that my teachers told me I need to improve. And so it's come up with some activities. Activity 1, I'll provide you with a list of words. You match them with the correct collocation. So that's matching first. Activity 2 is fill in the blanks. So it's provided sentences and I have to add the part of the collocation. Activity 3, create sentences. Please let me know when you'd like to, which activity you'd like to start with, or if you have specific collocations. So I can do those activities and then I can post in here and ask for feedback on my answers. So it will correct the answers too. So that's a really useful thing for students to give to students, that little prompt. If you want them to get them working on their own and doing specific activities to improve themselves. The other thing that you can do is you can get it to become a role play partner. So if you want them to practice role plays at home so that when they do them in class together, they do a better job of it, you can give them different prompts and ask it to act as any kind of partner for a role play. In this one, I've decided it should act as an interviewer and I'll be a candidate and it will ask me questions about a specific job. So it doesn't have to be this, it could be anything, but I'll put that prompt in and I'll get it to interview me for a job. You just need to put the job title in, ESL teacher. So it's going to interview me for a job as an ESL teacher. Prompt's there and it starts asking me questions. Hello, thank you for joining us today. To get started, can you please tell me about your background and experience in teaching English as a second language? Okay, so okay. And it starts to interview me. That's impressive. With your extensive experience, you must have encountered various teaching scenarios. Can you share a specific example of a challenging classroom situation you faced as an ESL teacher and how you handled it? So that's quite, an in-depth question. And again, if I was using voice activation, I could just be answering it verbally and, I could continue the interview. And at the end of the interview, I can also ask ChatGPT to give me feedback on my answers and produce some example answers for me that would maybe have been better. So that's a great way to kind of, again, to get students preparing themselves at home for work that they're going to do in class. So they could practice their role play at home, get some feedback from ChatGPT, try to improve it, and then come and do it in class. And then in class, we're probably going to have a much better interaction. You can use voice with ChatGPT. I'm not using it now because I'm using my voice through Zoom. One of the final things I'll show you for students is how you can do interactive reading. And this is a very long prompt. If you were here at the beginning, you'll remember I said you could program ChatGPT. And this is kind of a program. And this one's is a program that creates a scenario from the Harry Potter series of books. Do your students read Harry Potter books? Can you type in a yes or no? Or have you read them? So what I'll do is I'll show you this very long prompt. It can be edited so that you can choose a different book. And what happens is it creates an interactive reading activity. So I put in my prompt And what it does is it puts me into the book, me as a character within the book. And I go into the book at the point where the different characters are being sorted into their different houses by the sorting hat. And what ChatGPT does, it sets the scene, so it describes what's happening. It asks me to step forward, and then the sorting hat starts to ask me questions. So the sorting hat voices echoes, tells me, dear student, what quality do you value most in yourself? Courage, loyalty, intelligence, or ambition? I'll say loyalty. So it should ask me 3 questions. And at the end of this, it will sort me into the one of the houses. So, okay, now, what kind of challenge or obstacle do you find most intriguing? Is it the quest for knowledge, facing your deepest fears, proving your bravery, or outsmarting your rivals? So I'll say it's the quest for knowledge. Okay. Last but not least, what animal do you find most fascinating? The lion, the badger, the eagle, or the serpent? So I'll say the lion. Okay, and it's decided that it will put me into Gryffindor. It's made me a Gryffindor. And then it describes what's happening next in the story. So I go to the Gryffindor table and I sit down next to a friendly looking girl with red hair. She says, hi there, I'm Lily. Welcome to Gryffindor. What's your name? What would you like to do? So I say, I'd like to learn about oceans. Okay, and based on my responses, I start to generate a story. And it's a story that's unique to each individual student because, they're each giving unique answers. And the story's been automatically generated. And so that makes it a really truly interactive, personalized reading experience for students. And one that they can really get involved with. They don't have to do it all in one evening. They can come back to it because the prompt stays in their chat history, so they can come back and keep adding more to the story and keep developing more each time they want to read. And it's a very interesting way of developing reading skills, and one that I think is going to become more common. So those are some of the things that we can do with students. In terms of developing ourselves, ChatGPT can also help us to develop our own knowledge as teachers. I'll come to that I'll come back to this one in a minute. So it can help us develop ourselves, and it can act as a mentor. There's a prompt here, again, quite a complex one, but it turns ChatGPT into a Socratic mentor for us. And this is a mentor that uses a Socratic form of teaching, which is based around asking questions. So instead of telling somebody something, you ask them questions and you continually guide them through the use of questioning and reassuring. So we can use this to develop our own teaching about any topic. I'm going to copy that and go back. See if I can get back to ChatGPT again. And again, I'll start a new chat because it's a new topic. I'll put in my prompt, and then I can choose what I want to learn about. So I'd like it to mentor me on the subject of inclusion in education. Okay, so I'll click that in. Okay. And it starts by saying, great, let's explore the topic of inclusion in education. To start, could you please give me a definition of what you understand by inclusion? So it's not telling me anything, it's asking me. So I give my definition. That's my definition. What's an error? See if I can read. If you ever get an error, just click edit, add a space, and then click Save and Submit, and it should get rid of it. There you go. Okay, so it replies, that's a good starting point. Inclusion in education does involve ensuring all students, and then it goes on, let's delve to a deeper level. What are some specific ways that schools or educators can help facilitate participation? I'm giving very vague answers here, making sure the environment is suitable. To explore this further, what elements or features of learning environment should we consider? So keep asking me questions and pushing to explore my knowledge, and at times it can help to develop my knowledge as well. Okay, so in this way, we can use it to develop our own teaching. I mean, I chose to center it for it to mentor me on inclusion, but it doesn't have to be. It could be any topic. It could be about teaching grammar, or it could be about teaching vocabulary, or it could be a specific approach like dogme or guided discovery. But it will mentor me and ask me questions, and I can come back to that as well. It doesn't have to be a 5 or 10 minute session. That chat stays in my history, and I can come back to it every night and ask a couple more and answer a couple more questions and interact with it a little more. And that's a great way to sort of develop my teaching and get some guidance from somebody who knows, from somebody who knows something. And often as a teacher, we just get the teacher development that we're given, or sort of the odd opportunity to sort of go and listen to someone on a webinar. But this can be very specialized individual attention that you can get from ChatGPT. Okay, so there are a number of issues and challenges with it that we can't ignore, and some of them, these have come up with the question within the questions already, and I'll try to deal with a few of them. I mean, one of the first and most common ones, I find is that ChatGPT makes mistakes. You can't trust it because it will give you inaccurate sources. And in a way, that's true. I don't think it undermines the value of it, but I think if you're looking to kind of do research on ChatGPT, then it's not really the right tool for you. I think what you'd be better off using is a tool called Find. If I click this, it will click. And this is like a combination of ChatGPT and Google. So when you ask it something, so I'm going to ask it to tell me about inclusion in education. What it will do is it will do two things. On the one hand, it will give you a kind of ChatGPT explanation of different aspects of inclusion in education, which you can see appearing here. But you can see it's also giving references. There's a little 1 and a 5, and it references these sources down the side. So that combines the two. It's giving you information, but it's telling you where it comes from. It's not making it up. It's actually taking it from specific sources, telling you what those sources are. So in this way, you're able to actually do research and check, you have this helpful summary, ChatGPT type summary, but you can also check that the sources are authentic as well. So that's a much better tool if you want to do accurate research. I've just put the link to that into the chat. One of the other common issues is around cheating. And I think this is probably a more complex issue, and I think, there is a tool called ChatGPT 0, and I'll share this with you in the chat, that claims to be able to detect text that has been produced by AI. But to be honest, these tools are remarkably inaccurate, and they're not really to be trusted. And I think that they're also very easy to fool. You only have to change a few different words, change the case or the person, and it's very easy to fool these tools into thinking that it's been a human created text. They also quite commonly make mistakes and detect human created text as being produced by AI. So I don't think that's really the answer. I think what we really need to think about is, cheating isn't something new. It isn't something that's just happened because of ChatGPT. It's been around a long time, and I think what we really need to do is rethink the way we assess and evaluate our students in the light of what their needs are for the 21st century. It's likely that, in their coming jobs, they're going to be using AI tools. I think we all are going to be using them. So we need to train our students how to use them responsibly and to have assessment that incorporates the use of these kinds of tools to assess students' ability to use them and to produce text accurately. And I think that involves rethinking assessment, making it much more personalized so that students need to take from their experience and they need to do, proper research or something like that that they report on. And I think, we need to start evaluating sort of things like critical thinking, less than just a text that they're producing. And the last of my sort of big challenges, I think, is and this one's much harder to sort of answer, is the impact that this has on writing skills. If we can go to ChatGPT and get it to write an email for us, what then do we teach in terms of writing skills? How do we teach students to recognize what is a good example of an email as opposed to a not a very good one? How do we teach them what good writing looks like? Because the truth is that ChatGPT can produce all of these things. It can write a book, but it won't be a great book. It will be a kind of, that's okay kind of book. And we need to expect our students to be able to do better than that. Sure, they should be working with ChatGPT to do it, but we still need to teach them how to do that. There's an interesting article here from a professor from a US university who's come up with a framework called SPACE. And the SPACE framework looks at how he's getting his students to use ChatGPT as part of producing their academic writing. And so I think we need to look at frameworks like this and think about, how they impact on writing skills and how we need to change writing skills and develop the way we teach writing skills to incorporate these kinds of tools. So those are my three big issues. And what I'll leave you with is three tools as well. Excuse me a minute. The first one is called Open Assistant. And this is like an open source version of ChatGPT. It's free and anyone can use it anywhere. It's not limited by location either. So, if you're in a country where ChatGPT is either banned or isn't available yet, you can still use this. There's no geographical restrictions on it. And it works in the same way as ChatGPT, and you can use all the same prompts that I've used in this presentation. Another really useful thing is this one called Audio, and it's a very useful tool for producing listening activities for your students. All you have to do is type the text, and it will produce the audio for you. And the voices are very realistic and very, very easy to believe and easy to share. It's free as well. So this one is like a pronunciation practice that I created, and I can grab a link from there and I can share it with you if I want to, if I can remember how. Okay, I think this is the tool. Audio, just change speaker, select voice, new page. Somewhere down here, I should be able to share the link to it. You can check that out later. I'll add a thing, but that's a great way of creating audio for free. And again, that's a great if you need to create personalized listening activities for your students. It can be done very quickly. If you have to leave, don't worry. Last one is something called Gamma, and this creates instant presentations. And these are really very impressive. All you need to do is type in the topic of your presentation, and it will produce something for you that looks very impressive in just a few moments. It will include all of the images and all of the content. I'll show you this one on changing mindset. So I wanted a presentation on changing 10 tips on changing mindset. And this is what it produced for me. And I haven't edited this at all. I just typed in the title. So it's got some steps to learning, some different bits of advice, accept feedback, emphasize effort. So these are the 7 tips, and it's done all of the layout, produced the images, and produced all of the text for me. I'll still need to go through that and make sure that it's accurate if I'm doing that with my students, but that's a very kind of quick way of producing very, very attractive materials, and that uses Gamma. Okay, so that's about it for me. I'm happy to, I'll just tell you I have a course and a course book that I've written on ChatGPT in the language classroom. So if you're interested in doing a course that has material like this, has 50 different lessons in it, by all means go here and check out the course and sign up. It's a moderated course. You can take as long as you want to do it, and there's no kind of deadline. You can spend a month doing it or a week doing it, whichever you like. And you'll learn a lot more about ChatGPT, how to produce prompts, how to use prompts, and a range of different tools from it. So thank you for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any questions for me. And also there's the QR code for the presentation with all the links in, and I'll also post that as well.